Good day. I'd like to wish all the members of the Emeriti Association and their families a good day for this final business meeting of the year. Many thanks to the Danny Green Trio for their jazz warm-up. I've always enjoyed their musical interludes and presentations. I'd like to announce that we will all be muted on our Zoom program application to start and request that you unmute yourself when it's time to speak. As the Emeriti Association president for the last year, I'm of course honored as my last official duty as president to provide you with a review of the year for our association's activities and what we've accomplished. And what a year it's been. To start off, I'd like to offer my sincerest apologies for paraphrasing Charles Dickens. It was the worst of times. It is the best of times. It has been a year of losses. It has been a year of gains. It was a year of foolishness. Some would say idiocy. It was a year of wisdom. It was the epic of incredulity. It was the epic of belief. There was a season of darkness. There is a season of light. There was a winter of despair. There is a spring of hope. It has truly been a de novo tale of two cities. It has truly been a tale of two worlds. You may have noticed I have depicted many of the polarities of the tale of two cities in reverse. We gain the ability to adjust quickly by going dark live and by going brightly virtually. With one exception, we gained attendees to our programs, but we lost our friend, colleague, and mentor, Professor Emeritus Mark Applebaum, whose work as an emeritus professor was cut short. In memory of Mark, I want to share my screen to show this etching by the artist Sir Samuel Luke Fields, who was working on illustrations for the book The Mystery of Edwin Drood that Charles Dickens was writing at the time when he had a stroke and passed away in 1870. It depicts the chair in Dickens's study at Gads Hill Place that was left vacant. This iconic image reminds us of Mark and his empty chair position in the Chancellor's Scholars Mentoring Program. It first appeared as an etching, but was later followed by a watercolor, which is now shown here. We kept to ourselves, but we shared virtual times together. There were times when our healthcare system was overwhelmed. There were times when thousands of vaccines were delivered into the arms of the hopeful, and the beds opened up, and the hospital dischargers were joyful, and it hastened us to a spring of hope and return. A return to campus life, to campus meetings, to the campus of our future, a campus perhaps without masks. And in the spirit of renewal, the filling of an empty chair, with many thanks to Anne Craig and Gabrielle Wienhausen. And now, with respect to the alumni, to the Emeriti Association, I'd like to say our membership number remains at 570, with new retirees compensating for attrition. Annual and lifetime membership dues remains at $30 and $300 respectively, but additional contributions are always appreciated. The Boynton booklet was just posted with the newest 10th edition of this key informational document for Emeriti and their departments. And it's posted on the Emeriti Association website just this past February. Although it's not totally official, it is in fact a wonderful summary of all the benefits and rights that Emeriti actually are entitled to. And I recommended highly that all Emeriti and prospective Emeriti review it. The Emeriti Association was able to continue its highly acclaimed monthly Emeriti academic lecture series for its members this year under the outstanding programming efforts of our Vice President, Stephen Adler, to whom I get to pass the virtual gavel shortly at this very meeting. We heard a variety of outstanding and unique presentations by UC faculty speakers on a broad range of topics, as varied as global warming by Professor V. Ram Ramanathan from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, design by Professor Robert Brill from Theater and Dance, perspectives of public health by the Dean of Family Medicine and Public Health, Cheryl Anderson, a historic perspective on property, psychology, and the environment by Associate Professor Kathy Geer from the Department of History, and artificial intelligence models of cancer for diagnosis and treatment by Dr. Trey Eidecker from medicine. We learned how and why the jerboa got its long feet from Associate Professor Kim Cooper, and we heard about the history of often ignored Jewish support of civil rights struggles from Associate Professor Amelia Glasser with her fascinating presentation, Songs in Dark Times, Yiddish Poetry of Struggle from Scottsboro to Palestine. Today, we'll be hearing the finale for the year, which Professor Emeritus Adler will introduce shortly as he plays his trump card. Each of these original presentations was recorded and can be watched on the Emeriti Association playlist on the RA YouTube channel. Attendance has been repeatedly higher than in the in-person presentations pre-pandemic, with even greater numbers of viewers of the recordings. Signups for these and most other events are at the EA RSCP website, where detailed flyers can be found. The Emeriti Book Club has been virtually meeting monthly all this year, with books chosen by the book club members who lead the discussions. Thanks to Dr. Roger Sprague as the spearhead and chronicler for this activity. The Chronicle is the quarterly newsletter for the Emeriti Association, edited by Professor Emeritus Sandy Lakoff. It has all sorts of interesting articles for your reading pleasure and can be found on the EA website. As you know, the Emeriti Mentor Program continues to sponsor the Chancellor Scholars Program to provide first-generation college students leadership and presentation skill opportunities, as well as one-on-one mentoring. We currently have 45 mentors for the 40 first and second year undergraduates, and some mentors and students continue their interactions through the third and fourth years and beyond. It's been a source of generational sharing of knowledge, experience, and insight that benefits both mentors and mentorees alike. Additionally, Emeriti Association members have together contributed over $60,000 to the Chancellor Scholars Fund that supports scholarships in each cohort. It should be noted that the Emeriti Chancellor Scholars Fund is a separate program from the Chancellor's Associate Scholars. And we hope that when you do make your donations to the Emeriti Chancellor Scholars Program, your donation gets to the correct fund. Please contact the RRC for correct fund numbers. We certainly welcome further Emeriti to volunteer as mentors for the coming year. I want to say a few things about Emeriti productivity as the 11th virtual campus. The last report on the triennial survey of Emeriti's professional output, which covered the years 2017 to 2020, is available on the CUSIA website, which is the Council of University of California Emeriti Associations. The point should be made that this past year, pretty much all UC campuses were in fact close to virtual, if not totally virtual. That's truly important whenever you receive the Triennial Emeriti Activity Survey in the future to respond and fill it out with all your academic and professional societal activities, classes taught, lectures given, achievements and awards when it shows up in a couple years. The greater the productivity of the greater UC alumni as tracked by CUSIA, the more influence it will afford us now and in the future to be able to represent our emeritus status and the continuation of current benefits. Considering the dire losses of use at the UC campuses that have been sustained in this plague year. This has been pointed out to UC President Michael Drake in a letter by our own Professor Emeritus Henry Powell, who is the UCSD EA liaison to CUSIA and the current chair of the council. Continued improvement in representing Emeriti and our interests by the Emeriti Association has been crucial in dealing with significant issues that have arisen recently, including attempts at redefining eligibility for emeritus status, interruption of payments to survivors, and changes in the RASC, the Retirement Administration Service Center, with reductions in its services. There is, however, active involvement in the ongoing redesign of the RASC with interactions with the Office of the President, as well as in participating jointly with other campus Emeriti associations to protect the interests of Emeriti and our families. Activities of our Emeriti Association have been nonstop, but that is not all. There continues to be a significant partnership with the Retirement Association due to the outstanding coordination of both associations by Director Suzanne Chaffee, Vanya Bailon Casarubias, and some of the Chancellor scholars themselves working as part-time staff. The wide spectrum of Retirement Association activities are often open and attended by Emeriti Association members, sharing presentations on subjects such as health and wellness, meditation classes, senior and financial education seminars, an investment interest group, a walking group, and a virtual foreign travel group, among many others. The much improved Emeriti Association website should be visited frequently as it is easier than ever to use, with links galore. Additional acknowledgement and thanks are given to our board members and committee chairs, historian Dr. Jack Fisher, who's working on identifying and collecting historical photographs of the campus, Kim Signore Parr, membership committee, Henry Powell, Cuccia, representative and chair, Ann Skinner, Retirement Association liaison, Carmel Myers, secretary treasurer, Phyllis Mirsky, CUSIA secretary, and the past president of the Emeriti Association, Professor Bob Knox, chair of the nominations committee and the awards committee. And speaking of Bob Knox, where is he? I have the distinct pleasure of handing off the Zoom speaker's box at this time and mic to Bob Knox, who will present this year's Emeriti Association Award. Bob?
Thank you, Jake, and I'll try to be as brief as possible about this. If you were looking at the introductory slides before the meeting came to order, we've got 3 major awards to celebrate today. Procedurally, these nominations were assembled under the auspices of the Emeriti Association and then sent upward to the powers that be for final decisions. But a lot of the actual work of writing nomination statements and obtaining letters of support and so forth was done by a lot of other colleagues, including the other members of the awards committee. So I'd like to thank them and all those other colleagues, too numerous to name here, for assembling the ingredients and thoughts that led to these successful nominations. First of all, the Dixon Awards are funded from, as you saw in the introductory slides, they're funded under a trust that was provided by UC Regent Dixon some time ago. The trust income is used to recognize Emeriti for their continuing service, teaching, and research. In 2003, UCOP split this fund 10 ways, so each campus could offer a $10,000 award every year. And in fact, the funds have now become enough that we can award 2 such awards this year. These awards go from the EA up to final approval from the Executive Vice Chancellor. In alphabetical order, the first awardee, Dixon Award, is Professor Emeritus Lawrence Brunton of the Department of Pharmacology in the School of Medicine. And across that school, he's known widely as a lifelong leader in medical education and as a superb teacher in pharmacology. In his emeritus status, he continues to teach core pharmacology courses, something that not every medical faculty member is willing to do. He's carried a full teaching load and has also mentored and coached younger faculty to take his place. He participated in the UCSD component of IRA CDA Aracta, which is the Institutional Research and Academic Career Development Awards. That's a nationwide program under NIH auspices that focuses on minority postdocs and provides a very broad sort of how-to program for every aspect of a young research trainee's career. And again, in post-retirement, he's worked hard to facilitate the succession of new members, new leadership to this very important educational program. And thanks to his work on it, the UCSD IRACTA program is one of the most highly regarded in the nation. I could say a lot more, but time is very limited. So please simply join me in congratulating Professor Brunton on his award. And the floor, or rather the screen, is now his for a minute or two if he wants to use it to say a few words.
Well, thanks, Bob. And thanks very much to all of you who are tuning in and to the Emeriti Association. I really appreciate this recognition, and it's a pleasure, I might add, to share it with the next person whose name I won't mention until you do, Bob. But I see you, Jane, and I'm glad to share it with you. I came to UCSD as a postdoc in the fall of 1976, and I've just never left. I spent my entire career in what was called the Basic Science Building, now the Biomedical Science Building. But I felt the need to get out of my cubicle there occasionally, and I wanted to thank the benevolent people who allowed me to do that and to step aside occasionally from my research to do other things. I would say UCSD has been a wonderful place to grow up as a professor. And the people who enable me to do research also enable me to step aside from my lab occasionally. I want to mention minority admissions programs in the biomedical sciences PhD program, and mention Dick Atiyah, who was very important and is a member of this association when Dick was Dean of Graduate Studies. He and his employee, Victor Chavez, were very helpful in getting me going on working on minority admissions. And to Francisco Villarreal, who is retiring next month, and I think I'm definitely going to twist his arm to join this association. He has helped me a lot in recruiting young people who otherwise might be left out. I keep wanting to remind all of us we're a state institution, and that doesn't mean everybody who enters graduate school should look like me. I also want to thank Palmer Taylor and Joan Brown. They were my department chairs over the years, and they encouraged some of my extracurricular activities like the IRACTA program, a post-bac program that I founded, and a few other things. I have a great interest in the environment and in ecology, and Palmer Taylor encouraged that. Through him, I was appointed to the scientific review panel of the California Air Resources Board and learned quite a lot, and to the Air Pollution Control.
I think you're muted.
Muted. You're muted, Larry.
I'm sorry, but I think in the interest of time, Bob, we may need to move forward.
Okay.
My mistake, I'd been told 5 minutes, but I don't need it.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And moving straight ahead to the second Dixon Award, it goes to Professor Emerita Jean Ferrani in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering in the Jacobs School of Engineering. Professor Ferrani has had a distinguished career as a researcher and a scholar in the field of computer science. She's received numerous awards, notably including being selected as a fellow of the IEEE and also a fellow of the similar Association for Computing Machinery. Prior to retirement, she devoted a lot of her time to higher level UCSD responsibilities as chair of computer science and engineering, and then as associate dean of the Jacobs School and associate vice chancellor for faculty equity. That latter position exemplifies her strong and continuing pursuit of ways to enhance diversity and gender equity at UCSD generally, and particularly in the heavily male world of computer science. In retirement, she's become a mentor in the Chancellor Scholars Program. Many of those students are themselves computer science majors, so Professor Ferrani is superbly positioned to exemplify diversity for them, showing what a successful woman engineer and scientist looks like, and giving them sound counsel and guidance in their undergraduate years. In another form of university service, and one that draws on her remarkable skills at building and working with complex teams, she's co-chairing a working group that's developing a proposal for an on-campus retirement community of public-private partnership. It's envisioned to become a state-of-the-art home for a stable, diverse, and engaged community of resident adults, benefiting from the best practices in healthy aging developed at UC San Diego and elsewhere. Again, time only allows for me to say these few points from a much larger file, so please join me in congratulating Professor Emerita Ferrani on her award, and she now also has a minute or two of screen time if she wishes to say a few words.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to accept the Dixon Award this year and really humbled to be among the other wonderful recipients, starting with Larry, but also people that I know pretty well, like Joel Dimsdale and Cecil Lytle and Dave Miller, to name just a few. So I'm thinking about this, one of the joys of service to the UC San Diego community is to watch how a fledgling start motivated by a passion to change can grow into much more than was originally envisioned. And I've been privileged to see this a number of times. For example, fostering service learning to help start teams in engineering service undergrad program, which has now grown into global ties with projects with nonprofits around the world and was instrumental in making UCSD a changemaker campus. And also helping a small group of formerly incarcerated UCSD students form their own student org, Underground Scholars, which has since become, by their efforts, a program under OASIS to help support incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people to pursue higher ed. So Bob mentioned our efforts towards the retirement community at UCSD, and I thank the Emeriti and retirement associations and Suzanne for their support here. I'm also very enthusiastic about these efforts. Though the pandemic has put most of those efforts on hold, we hope to re-engage very soon. And just yesterday, you may have seen in the paper, the San Diego City Council voted to lift the deed restrictions on a 43-acre site, East Campus parcel that includes one of the two potential sites for this community. So thank you very much for the recognition and the honor, and I'll hand it back to Bob.
Thank you. And finally, the third of the three awards being discussed today, it's a pleasure to announce that Professor Emeritus Wayne Cornelius is the winner of the Constantine Panunzio Award this year. This is a very distinguished UC-wide award, only one, very occasionally, 2 awards per year. It was created by a bequest from Professor Panunzio of UCLA, and the award honors outstanding scholarly work and/or educational service performed by a University of California emeritus or emerita in the humanities or social sciences since retirement. Each campus forwards its own approved nomination to the Panunzio Committee at UCLA, where the final selection of the winner is made. Just over 40 individuals have been thus honored in just under 40 years since 1983. Professor Cornelius is the 5th UCSD winner over this span of time. If I were to try to describe his full record of post-retirement accomplishments, let alone his entire career, this Zoom call would last for hours, and I think I know what Suzanne would have to say about that. Instead, let me read just 2 extracts from that very large file. The nomination letter prepared by Department Chair Kusser and his colleagues says, quote, "In the period following his retirement in 2009, Dr. Cornelius has continued to exemplify excellence through his superb research, visionary program development, invaluable service, and in all of his work, his commitment to applying professional academic expertise to critical social and public issues. At the same time that he has published enough academic work after retirement to have earned promotion to another full professorship, Professor Cornelius has also been deeply engaged in public service, advising multiple presidential campaigns during an important political transition, and publishing frequent commentary pieces in leading outlets to bring important factual expertise to bear on the vital issue of immigration, close quote. And then this is followed by about 5 pages of tightly written fact-laden text about his post-retirement work and accomplishments, and another 5 pages or so about his earlier career. You get the idea. One of the supporting letters echoes these kinds of superlatives, saying, quote, although letters of recommendation are sometimes a chore, this one is both a pleasure and an honor, as Wayne is so exceptional a person, a giant in the migration field, an academic institutional builder par excellence, a dynamo filled with energy that is always channeled productively, and an admirable human being. Up until retirement, Wayne's career can only be described with superlatives. Although it's hard to imagine that this can be possible, I think Wayne's post-retirement career seems almost more amazing. Who else could fill a 16-page CV replete with publications, courses taught, students mentored, grants raised, lectures delivered, and, starting only on page 12, an unbelievable list of services to the university and the community? You see the general pattern here, and I've barely scratched the surface of that large file that makes the crystal clear case for the Panunzio Award to Professor Cornelius. So please join me in congratulating him, and I think he does have a few brief remarks prepared. So Professor Cornelius.
Thanks very much, Professor Knox. And special thanks to Thad Kouser, our esteemed chair of political science, for his great nomination letter. Of course, getting a career award like the Panunzio is a function of longevity. And I've been able to stick around long enough since my first retirement to do some interesting things. There have actually been 3 retirements, and I'm flunking my 4th one. But here's my top 10 list of things that retirement has enabled me to do. Number 1, write whatever I want. No more grant proposals, and write as many op-eds as I like without worrying that fellow academics will take them as proof of my fundamental lack of seriousness. Number 2, say whatever I want with no fear of offending funders or UC administrators. Number 3, develop new lines of professional specialization distant from my home discipline, like global public health. Number 4, when doing immigration research, practice sociology without a license. Number 5, peddle my policy ideas to presidential candidates who might actually use 1 or 2 of them. Number 6, mentor very bright students at any college, university, or high school around the country. Number 7, spend time with my grandchildren, but not nearly enough because they live in the Bay Area. Number 8, indulge my rather slender gifts as a choral musician, but not learning how to play the piano, alas. Number 9, spending a lot more time gardening in constant combat with the squirrels. And number 10, devote 3 or 4 days a week to providing canine therapy to hospital patients, enabling Bentley, my wonderful white Labrador therapy dog, to work his magic. Having done this type of volunteering for 12 years, I know that I want to come back as a therapy dog. Thanks so much for your attention.
And now I believe it's over to me to present the approved slate for, there it is, for the members of the Emeriti Association Executive Committee for the coming year. You see them there on the screen. I will just read the actual officers and members at large. You can read the ex officio members for yourselves. President Stephen Adler, Vice President Alan McCutcheon. Whoa, what happened? There it is. Secretary Treasurer Carmel Myers, past President Jake Jacoby, and the members at large, Kim Senior Parr, John Goodkind, Richard Madsen, Roger Sprague, Gabriella Wienhausen, Gail Liu, and Jean-Bernard Minster. This slate was sent to the membership for electronic voting and approved overwhelmingly. So I now declare that this is the slate of the list of officers, members at large, and ex officio members for the coming year. And I invite Jake Jacoby to hand over his virtual gavel to Stephen Adler at this point, and we'll proceed from there.
Thank you, Bob. And in fact, since we're in a virtual age, I don't know what a virtual gavel looks like. However, I do have this device here to represent the official gavel turnover to my friend and colleague, Stephen Adler. And so, Stephen, congratulations and the best of luck. And we'll still be around. So we're still in this together. Here you go.
Thank you, Jake, and Bob and Suzanne. I want to be, in my very first official act as president, I want to be mindful of our time. And so I will defer my opening remarks and fold them into my closing remarks so that we can move ahead with the program. It's my sincere privilege and honor to introduce three of our terrific Chancellor Scholars students to present Feeding Seaweed to Cows. Please welcome Manuel Figueroa, Sophia Turcott, and Chaska Kentish.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia Turcott. I am a first year's Chancellor Scholar in Revelle College, and I'm currently an undeclared major.
Hi, I'm Chaska Kentish. I'm also a first year Chancellor Scholar, and I'm studying biology in Eleanor Roosevelt College.
Hi, my name is Manuel Figueroa. I'm also first year Chancellor Scholars. I'm studying mechanical engineering in New York College. And today we'd like to present our findings on the topic of feeding seaweed to cows.
So as I'm sure we're all aware, climate change threatens a host of issues. It threatens to increase global temperatures, melt permafrost and Arctic ice, and cause sea levels to rise due to thermal expansion. Now, each of these leads to a host of other potentially detrimental hazards to both our climate and our society. For instance, warmer temperatures and rising sea levels can increase both the frequency and the severity of natural disasters, which can threaten both our infrastructure and our lives. Additionally, warmer climates can increase the range of temperature-dependent diseases such as malaria, so that regions further from the equator will experience an increase in these diseases that they may have not previously had problems with before, rendering them unequipped to deal with such issues. Climate change goes far beyond just hotter summers and higher tides, and with 2020 tying with 2016 as the hottest year on record, action needs to be taken. Sadly enough, the lockdown had no real impact on climate change and registered only as a common fluctuation in our carbon cycle. Additionally, 2020 was 1.2 degrees Celsius hotter on average than the average year in the 19th century, which was pre-industrial revolution. Now, this really points the finger to our increased consumption of fossil fuels as the primary cause of global warming. Methane, specifically, like other greenhouse gases, traps heat in our atmosphere and causes our global temperatures to rise. And while methane emissions may be lower than carbon dioxide emissions on the whole, they impact climate change a staggering 30 times more than carbon dioxide. 24% of these global methane emissions specifically come from the agriculture industry. And being able to target where these emissions come from is really important because it helps us better be able to reduce them on the whole. Next slide.
So this raises the question, how do cows themselves contribute to climate change? Well, cows account for about 37% of methane emissions every year, which is just over half of agricultural emissions specifically. And many of these emissions are produced from gas such as belches or even from their breathing, as well as animal waste. And much of this is caused by current feeding practices that farmers use for cattle. Most common feeds such as corn and soy actually increase gas in cows, as well as current grazing practices are an alternative to this in certain seasons or certain lands. However, this is also a bad way to feed cows because the grass also encourages the release of methane, as well as it's actually worse because it releases carbon dioxide, and then most fertilizers used utilize nitrogen, which has a release of nitrous oxide, another powerful greenhouse gas. So currently most feeding practices actually have a negative climate change on a whole, especially related to cows. And this is extremely important because while industrial nations, meat and dairy demand is only going to increase about 13% by 2030. In most developing nations, this is going to be increasing by 45%, which will lead to about 361 million more cows globally by 2030. So to resolve climate change effect by cows, we need to change the feeding habits, which can be done by introducing seaweed to their diet. Next slide.
Now, we've seen the detrimental effects of methane, and as Chaska mentioned, seaweed may actually be the solution. Now, initially, it may not be entirely clear what the connection is, and so we're going to be taking a look at a specific company called Symbrosia and how they're implementing seaweed to reduce methane emissions. So Symbrosia is a clean tech startup based in Hawaii, and what they're doing is farming a specific type of seaweed called the Asparagopsis taxiformis. Now, what they do with this is after they harvest it, they use it as a feed additive in the diets of cows. So the traditional diet that cows have, they'll have small portions of seaweed added, anywhere from 0.5% to 3%. And depending on how much seaweed they add, that determines how much methane is inhibited. So the most promising results of this new research is that small quantities of seaweed, as little as 0.5%, can reduce methane emissions by as much as 80%, which is a huge promising result. So how does Symbrosia go about doing this? So what they do is use a farming process called aquaculture. This is both an efficient and sustainable process. This process essentially tries to emulate the conditions in which this subtropical seaweed typically grows. So what they will do is try to assimilate the acidity of the water, the temperature, the salinity, in order to make it as close to the natural environment so that the seaweed may grow in the most efficient manner possible. But the process of growing seaweed itself is a very sustainable process because it's carbon negative. So as the seaweed grows, it's removing carbon dioxide. And then once it's added into the diets of cows, that also reduces methane levels. So the effect is really twofold. Now, this research is new. And so, of course, this industry is still growing. It's in its infancy. But also, due to the physical fragility of this type of seaweed, much research and practice is needed in order to cultivate it. But this is still good news because this means that there's much room for optimization in this general process and industry. And as more companies begin to join in, we can see a more widespread implementation. I'd also like to add that this specific company, Symbrosia, the feed additive that they are making is also safe for sheep, goats, and buffalo. And this is important because cows contribute to methane, but these animals also contribute to methane. It's still not as great as a contribution of cows, but having a feed additive which addresses all these issues is a very good alternative and a very promising solution. And now Sophia will talk a bit about how this seaweed actually inhibits methane production.
So yeah, this seaweed is not just some magical solution or potion. I'm going to do my best to explain the chemistry behind it. So the biological process that produces methane is called microbial enteric fermentation, which is essentially just the digestive process through which cows break down carbohydrates or the grass that they eat. This process is responsible for cow methane emissions, and essentially diatomic hydrogen molecules combine with carbon dioxide to produce methane, CH4. But when the seaweed is added to the cow's diet, it includes an enzyme which blocks the CH4 molecules from forming and thus disrupts the formation of methane, thus reducing emissions on the whole. And it's really important to note that this process is seemingly harmless to the cows and does not inhibit milk production or affect the meat because the enzyme does not disrupt fatty acid production, meaning that the quality of the cow products will not be affected by the additives. Next slide, please. So it's really important, obviously, to consider the drawbacks that can be had while implementing this. So firstly, the harvest of algae can be a really difficult and expensive task. Typically, a method called flocculation is used, in which chemicals clump the algae biomass together. It's really important for the environment's sake to consider the toxicity of the chemicals used, but typically they're harmless and are really similar to the agents used in like water purification. The algae is then collected through either filtration or flotation, and there are numerous steps in this harvesting and cultivation process, all of which require labor, equipment, and time, which are costly resources. Furthermore, the algae can really only be grown in certain conditions, which can be costly to maintain and rare to find. In the instance of ocean cultivation specifically, it's really important to consider the effect that the algae will have on local ecosystems. They can affect oxygen levels, nutrient availability, and sunlight levels, all of which have the potential to drastically imbalance the abiotic conditions of an ecosystem. Furthermore, research on the subject requires large amounts of funding, which are not exactly readily available in a for-profit economy. And there's really has been little research done on the subject, but it is possible that the microbes in the cow's stomachs may actually have the capacity to adapt to the seaweed additives, which would lower their effectiveness on the whole. So overall, it's really important that more research has been done on the subject. Next slide, please.
So as Sophia just mentioned, there are many downsides to the initial use of seaweed for cows because it's really expensive and it's going to take a lot of time to set up. However, it is very beneficial, and the benefits will actually outweigh the cons over time. As you can see in the graph on the screen, methane could actually be reduced by 95% or higher by adding seaweed to a cow's diet. And furthermore, by adding seaweed to a cow's diet, even if it's in a minimal amount, there will be much more land that can be freed up to utilize for more efficient crops because most feed crops like corn and soybeans are actually less efficient to grow per year versus something like seaweed and other forms of crops that are actually used for human consumption. Because as of 2020, the highest amount of corn that could be grown per acre was only 4.5 tons per year, whereas soybeans were 1.4 tons per year, whereas seaweed can be as much as 10 tons per acre per year, which makes it much more efficient. So by adding that to the diet, you could reduce unnecessary land use for the other crops. Furthermore, this would become more cost efficient over time. Initially, it would be more expensive. However, over time, seaweed could cost as little as $30 US, which in comparison to corn is $195 US and soy is $408 US per ton. So over time, seaweed would become much more affordable for farmers to use for a cow's feed.
Stop.
Oh. And the best way to lead to this would be by adding incentives to set up the system. Next slide.
Okay, so we've taken a look at how the benefits of seaweed as a solution outweigh the drawbacks, but in order for this to happen, change is necessary. And the only way this effect will be significant if we can implement the solution on a greater scale. And people need incentives to do this. So there are a few different ways to do this. One of the key incentives would be financial incentives, so tax breaks or carbon taxes, which would allow those that are using the seaweed alternative to benefit from that. And also, as this industry begins to grow, there will be increased accessibility, which will make everything a little easier and facilitate this transition. Now, one example we can take is here in California. So California farmers are strongly incentivized by a state mandate to cut their methane emissions by as much as 40% by the year 2030. So If someone begins to implement seaweed, the farmer, let's say, into the diet of their cows, that provides a clear-cut path to meet this mandate. So if we see this implemented on a greater scale, that could allow for a shift over to this new research and solution. In addition, each day, more and more often, we see the effects of climate change and greenhouse gases. And it's not the best marketing strategy for a company to promote themselves as someone who contributes to this issue. So one way they could overcome this is by promoting themselves as an environmentally friendly agricultural business, which takes advantage of these new innovations and tries to move forward. So with this in mind, we hope that this research truly does mark a pivotal moment for change and overall a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Well, I think you will all agree with us that these students are very, very impressive. Thank you very, very much, scholars, for your presentation. We are running late on time, so we are just going to allow one question. Please raise your hand electronically if you have a quick question for our Chancellor scholars. Okay. I am not seeing any, so I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Again, thank you very much. Oh, Karen, all right, you get the one question. Go ahead and please be brief, and scholars, please be brief in your response. Karen, unmute yourself to ask your question.
I'd like to know where I can get this information.
Well, you can watch this video presentation again once it's posted to YouTube tomorrow.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right, very good.
That's all.
And with that, we will thank you, students, for your excellent presentation.
Yes.
And we'll turn it back over to Stephen. Stephen Adler?
Yes, hi, thank you, scholars. I hope you're all of our audience have been equally impressed by the presentation and the research ability of our undergraduate students in the Chancellor Scholars Program. Thank you again, and congratulations on that. I would now like to move ahead and introduce our speaker, our keynote speaker for today, and speaker who marks the end of this year's lecture series. And I will say that in trying to come up with a lecture series of speakers from different disciplines for the year, it was a pleasure and a challenge. And I owe the presence of Harry Litman today to my wife, Nora, who said, "You got to get Harry Litman to speak." And he was gracious in his response when we asked him to join us today. So I thank my wife, and I will now introduce Harry Litman, who is a lawyer, a law professor, and a legal commentator. He is the former United States Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. He served previously as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Justice, an Assistant U.S. Attorney, and a Special Assistant U.S. Attorney. As U.S. Attorney, he launched and directed a nationally recognized gun violence reduction initiative, Operation Target, while overseeing a 20% increase in federal prosecutions and personally litigating cases in the District Court and the Court of Appeals. He's the current legal affairs columnist for the Los Angeles Times opinion page. From 2018 to 2020, he was a contributing columnist for the Washington Post. He has contributed commentary to many other national publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Lawfare. He is the creator, host, and executive producer of the Talking Feds podcast, a roundtable with prominent political and legal figures discussing issues of the day, as well as foundational issues in law and government. The podcast has been named to several best of lists. He is, of course, a frequent commentator on legal issues on MSNBC, CNN, Fox, CBS News, BBC News, and France 24. He's affiliated with the law firm Constantine Cannon, where he specializes in False Claims Act litigation. He also maintains a small independent private practice with specialties in white-collar criminal defense, constitutional law, and appellate law. He was lead counsel in UX Israel Washington versus EDMC, which resulted in the largest False Claims Act recovery ever for the Department of Education in a False Claims Act case. He successfully represented then Pittsburgh Mayor Tom Murphy in a federal criminal investigation into campaign activity, and he served as co-counsel in 2 cases in the United States Supreme Court. He is listed in Best Lawyers in America in 3 separate categories: commercial litigation, white-collar criminal defense, and qui tam law. He teaches constitutional law at UCLA and UCSD. He previously taught at Princeton's Woodrow Wilson School and the law schools of Georgetown, Rutgers, University of Pittsburgh, and UC Berkeley. He has published a number of articles on constitutional law, criminal law, and federalism. He is active in the community and serves on the regional leadership councils of Brady and the boards of the Constitutional Accountability Center and the San Diego branch of Jewish Family Services. In July of 2000, he was nominated by the president to a federal judgeship on the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania, but the Senate adjourned without taking action on the nomination. He received his BA from Harvard University and his JD from the University of California, Berkeley, where he was editor-in-chief of the Law Review, and he graduated Order of the Coif. Litman thereafter served as a law clerk to Judge Abner Mikva of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, and to Justice Thurgood Marshall of the United States Supreme Court and Justice Anthony Kennedy of the United States Supreme Court. Would you please join me in welcoming Harry Litman?
Thank you very much. I guess thank you very much, Nora, and to thank you for being her spokesperson, Stephen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'll forge ahead. When Stephen first got in touch with me, leading with a Rolling Stones lyric, so he had me at, please allow me to introduce myself. It was about a year ago, and we decided on the title during the heat of the presidential race, as I recall, last August. So the title, Restoring the Rule of Law Post-Trump, was precarious in 2 senses. One, it could have been the case that Trump might have won, so we would have been more in a reclamation project or a mitigation project, or he could have lost, but he would have been relatively forgotten, or it wouldn't have been our national business to restore the rule of law. As events turned out, he both lost, but on the very weak day even that you're meeting, he's back front and center in the news and very much on the topic of restoring the rule of law. So just this morning, you may have seen a broadside, a familiar one to Trump watchers, about witch hunts and political bias in response to the news that the New York Attorney General had joined forces with the New York District Attorney, and her civil investigation had now become criminal. And then we will have this week a vote, perhaps, on the January 6th commission that would attempt to shine a light on perhaps the most glaring act of contempt for the rule of law by a president in the nation's history. So we really are very much front and center again about the question of restoring the rule of law after Trump. And let me start by saying, I think it's a trickier question than it at first seems. It might have just thought, well, you know, whatever he did, do the opposite, or let's just tack in the opposite direction. But for serious and sophisticated stewards and inheritors of the government, I don't think it's possible to think just in those terms. I'm going to focus on the Department of Justice. I worked there for many years. I actually worked down the hall from then Associate Deputy Attorney General Merrick Garland, and so have, hold it most near and dear, but also that department, as much as any, really took it on the chin in the last 4 years with politicization of major cases, complete disregard for important norms like sharing of information, You had resignations, remarkable resignations from career employees in high-profile cases, and it was a cauldron of political pressure and seemed to be putting great stress on its traditional doing justice without fear or favor mission. So I'm going to focus on that, but I want to acknowledge that there are similar reclamation projects or strategies or thoughts going on in agencies around the government, around Washington. But in focusing on the department, let me start with three general points. First, and you can read a lot in the current sort of op-ed literature anyway about Garland as the anti-Barr, the anti-Trump, and so looking to him to simply whatever Barr did, he'll go the other way and just reverse things. But that's really both simplistic, I think, and also just wrong-headed. He's got a lot to do and is doing it to restore stability and the sense of mission. And I think his main contribution, he's signaled, will be a workaday Attorney General of integrity, renewed empowerment of the professional staff that number some 150,000, and not necessarily an avenging angel of justice. So go back to his confirmation, and with words that sort of belied his gentle manner, Garland told the Judiciary Committee, I don't plan to be interfered with by anyone. And he documented this sort of firm assurance he'd had from the president before agreeing to accept the job that the department and the White House would return to respect for certain behavioral norms. And that was a really important, I think, concept and term he chose, norms. That is, he's not looking to make legal overhauls or somehow try to write into the federal code some insurance against the abuses that took many by surprise in the Trump years. But he is not just looking to, but insisting on returning to the sorts of norms that governed the behavior of the DOJ and the White House before. Let me explain that just a little bit more. So he asked for, Biden was only too happy, of course, to give this commitment, but it's not cost free. So the day, you may recall, of Biden's big address, his most visible event as president so far to the joint Congress, was the day that the Department of Justice announced charges and federal charges against the 4 officers in the George Floyd case. Well, a politically attuned or communicating attorney general might have chosen another day, right? And it was made it very credible when he said they hadn't even consulted with the White House, and he intended to really have an independence, again, though, based on norms rather than sort of regulations. So he really elevated those and the sorts of understandings of good behavior that were, paramount and unquestioned in the years when he cut his teeth as a prosecutor and a sort of junior leader in the department. Policies, as he put it, that protect the independence of the department from partisan influence and law enforcement investigations, that strictly regulate communications with the White House. I could have a whole sort of presentation about the mind-bending series of complete eviscerations of what had been seen as no-brainer, don't go within a country mile of prohibitions on communications between the DOJ on the one hand and the White House on the other, or the DOJ on the one hand and Congress on the other. So he is, going for restoration of behavior That's not the same, though, as trying actually to sort of rewrite the rules, and that's important. I mean, you could argue that he's there now, and having it simply be the integrity of his own conduct might leave the department as vulnerable as ever to the next tyrant. But I think there's real soundness to his notion. First, of course, it's really hard to put good government into legislation. The best example here, I think, has been the really difficult and sad lessons even of our special counsel experiences, starting from the aftermath of Watergate and the Ethics in Government Act, which in very shorthand form, I think, put into place exactly the wrong kind of structure of complete independence for Ken Starr and the Whitewater investigation. And then in tacking against it, the exact wrong kind of structure of attorney general control and a sort of continuous boot on the neck, the exact wrong one for Robert Mueller's investigation of the president, the former president. Just a signal lesson in the difficulty of really trying to write things up. And it's far from clear anyway that a legislative code of conduct to give the force of law as opposed to norms would actually deter, a despot of the magnitude of Donald Trump, who trampled constitutional commands, statutes, regs, norms with equal indifference. But then finally, and here's where I want to focus, there's he wants to be an institutionalist, and there's an institutional anomaly to having the DOJ basically, curb its own behavior, because he has to think about, the future consequences of what he's doing. And that's what I want to spend the rest of my time talking about, hopefully not adding to the delay here. But look, first, continuity of agency practice, which he has invoked, and others could invoke the example of Edward Levy, the total down the middle workaday integrity attorney general who took the reins in the wake of Watergate, appointed by Ford, and was completely independent. So first, just an institutional mindset is itself kind of inherently conservative, at least in a small c sense. And then second, what is the main endeavor when all is said and done in the Department of Justice? Putting people in jail. That's the main thing they do. That is a conservative undertaking, and it's, would be a mistake to think of Garland in terms of the, say, the DAs that you've seen around the country, in Philadelphia, in Los Angeles now, who have really tried to undo the criminal justice system. That's not an institutionalist. That's not Merrick Garland. All right, so I want to try to illustrate this point that he is going to be an institutionalist, and that means something other than a reflexive reversal of whatever Barr did or Sessions did or Trump stood for. And I want to just bring up quickly 3 specific actions or decisions. The first is one the department took earlier this week. You may have read about it. During Barr's tenure, a grand jury was convened for some hard to explain or maybe pernicious purpose, but what they were investigating was who sent anonymous, nasty, mean, hurtful tweets about Devin Nunes. And somehow a federal grand jury was brought into place to try to figure this out and issued subpoenas. All right, that, it seems to me, is a no-brainer. There's no institutional weight for the Department of Justice's general mission to perpetuating that kind of crass, political, not even sort of disconnected from any kind of criminal justice legitimate purpose. And so you had the department simply saying no. The kind of action that many progressives would think and hope he would just do reflexively, he did here. We're shutting that down. This is an easy one. There's nothing on the other side. So that's decision one. Decision two. The previous administration decided to seek the death penalty in the case of the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh shooter who killed 13 people in a complete hate crime. Now, the president of the United States is opposed to the death penalty. We can well assume that there won't be new ones brought over his tenure, and I think Garland shares his ambivalence, to put it mildly, about the death penalty. But put yourself in the position of a attorney general who's not simply about trying to undo anything that Trump and Barr and others did, but trying to take seriously the mission of the Department of Justice and the continuity, the at least minimal political tinging of the decisions they make. And you can quickly see why there's a general presumption, and there is, about reversing something that the previous department did. That was easily overcome in the crass political and unjustifiable rummaging into Nunes. But what about here? Very serious case. If you were to endorse the death penalty, this would be high on your list. You have to give real thought to what it's going to look like if you simply reverse it. It's not, in general, he is trying to filter out all issues of politics, although it's not clear to me. We could have an interesting discussion about whether the political point that people would howl in indignation and it would be hard on Biden, at least a distraction for some of DOJ's work. Were they to reverse that decision? Is that, something to consider? So what I really want to present, my best prediction is they will not, that will be a death penalty that will continue to be sought under Garland and Biden. I could be wrong. My main mission here today is to express the nuance and complication of it for someone who is an institutionalist, and not to be looked to simply to undo decisions, even ones that he would not have made in the first instance. So it's a fine example for just this reason. We know that based on where they've been, there would not have been a death penalty sought, even in the Bowers case. Of course, that gets to another important concomitant of a fair and respectable Department of Justice, which is public expectations. The expectations have been set going forward for death penalty, but they've been set going backward for Bowers. What do you do about that? How do you discuss it? Okay, and then finally, another really tricky one that was in the news just last week. So many of you probably saw this. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who, as an aside, I want to say has been a hero and a real bulwark of judicial independence during the Trump years, ordered the Department of Justice to produce in a suit brought under FOIA by CREW, the Committee for Ethics in Washington, ordered the Department of Justice to turn over the memo that Bill Barr cited as part of his 48-hour blitz of the Mueller report and conclusion to the country, which turned out to be a gross distortion, that Mueller had found nothing criminal in what what Trump had done. What do you do with this as Merrick Garland? This has, on the one hand, a really strong public right to know. It coincides, of course, with political considerations, but even apart from that, the sort of most scandalous maybe or worrisome aspect of the whole Trump years is not the failure to charge the criminally culpable, but the success of miscreants in actually concealing what happened and part of the story. And we are left shockingly, with elliptical and a partial account of one of the most important junctures in American political history, right? This should be like 9/11 or the JFK assassination, but so much of it was successfully covered over. So here we have this memo, and Berman Jackson says, Barr, you were disingenuous. That's like, for judicial speak, that's like lying sack. I mean, that's really strong language. And for that reason, I conclude that the decision had already been made. Therefore, and now I come to the nub of the legal matter, the deliberative process exemption of FOIA was not met because that's for pre-decision discussions and memos. Back to Merrick Garland. Let's sit again one last time in his chair. There really is something strong, as I suggested at the outset, with a right to know here. But the Department of Justice's lookout is for a robust rather than a constrained deliberative process exemption under FOIA, right? That is their bread and butter in FOIA, protecting the deliberative process. And it is arguable, I think, at best. You know, Judge Jackson was reacting in part out of pique, but was it really the case that this was, you know, his mind was already made up? And what are the consequences of just turning it over now, as many observers have posited? Well, that's a precedent on the books. In these situations, deliberative process doesn't apply. Isn't there a more long-range horizontal interest in keeping it robust? And just to add to the procedural weight here, this is a decision whether to appeal a case that is supposed to be made by the Solicitor General, though in rare instances the AG can sort of weigh in. And we don't have a confirmed Solicitor General, we have an acting, but I think you have to go through that process. There'll be the litigating divisions of the civil division. They'll say, look, we don't care about transparency, we don't care about Trump. We have to stand up in court and litigate this every day. Don't take away, don't kind of cut one of our hands off for the next time we stand up. You have to worry first and foremost about the long-range institutional interest of the Department of Justice. This one strikes me as a real toss-up, really, really difficult question. You know, certainly if it weren't strong on the other side, I think you would expect an appeal. And again, it's supposed to be the lookout of the Solicitor General. But you can certainly see why it's the case that even after her decision, people's expectation that we're going to see this the next day and start nailing Barr for it, et cetera, have in fact been foiled, because there's just much more here in terms of the long-range interests of the Department of Justice, both in doing justice, but also in the more narrow way of protecting executive branch prerogatives. And that's what he's going to weigh, as opposed to, you know, a simple what happened before and how do we undo it, like, you know, the Herculean mucking out of the stables. All right, so I think I can stop here and talk about that or any questions anyone has, but the main, you know, the point I want to leave you with is, you know, thinking seriously about a absolutely virtuous, integrity-driven, but nevertheless institutional figure like Merrick Garland, and what that means for the welter of different decisions from a previous administration that will be coming his way. Anyway, so thank you for your time. And if we have time, I know we were running late, I'm happy to discuss. Oh, and I just want to say, because I saw us here, hello and my thanks. The reason I did get to teach political science at UCSD is because of Thad Kusser, who has been really terrific host, and I hope to do it again. Anyway, thank you again, Nora and Steve.
Thank you so much, Harry. We're very grateful, and I suspect that there will be a few questions. And so, again, sincere thanks for taking some time out of your day during May Gray here in La Jolla, and spending a little time with us here at UCSD. I will turn the emceeing job over to Suzanne, who is eminently qualified. If you have any questions, please use your electronic hand raising icon, and we will start it rolling. Suzanne, do you want to?
Yes, please. Well, let's start off with Stephen Rose. Go ahead, Stephen. Be sure to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
Go
okay. Sorry, the mute button wasn't responding very well. Nice presentation. I really enjoyed hearing that. A question I have, and maybe you answered and I missed it, but with the changes that have occurred recently, is there, what is the likelihood that you're going to see an opening up of Mueller's investigation and the possibility of suits against Trump and his team that kind of got sidetracked with Barr?
Well, if you mean suits like criminal law, U.S. versus Donald Trump, statute of limitations hasn't run. It's very much live. It's part of our recent history, and the chances of it happening, I would say, are zero. It's a good example of what I'm talking about. But Garland and Biden came in with a predisposition not to unearth the past, and he has in fact been pushed forcefully from that view by the January 6th insurrection, which absolutely require a full investigation, and a full investigation absolutely requires looking at the possible role of Trump as well as, say, Giuliani, Trump Jr. So that's been thrust in his lap and not necessarily welcome. It's a hornet's nest. In some ways, his job would have been easier if it weren't around. I don't think he's going to revisit. Now, it seems, if I heard you right, there was a two-part question, which is just how about will it be open? And I don't think they'll take extra efforts to open things that are not. Now, some things are already in litigation still, believe it or not, and those will probably be settled. I can only say that I believe, without having a really well-honed sense of the mechanism, that we will one day, maybe later than sooner, see the entirety of the Mueller report. But not in some kind of quick official action by the DOJ under Garland is my best guess.
All right, now Karen, followed by Christina.
Hi,
Hi.
Jerry Litman.
Hi.
I have to say, I wanted to come to this talk to hear what you had to say, but also I listened to you at the beginning of Trump's term, and I could understand your language, the language, the law language, the way you said it. You really helped me a lot. My sanity. These are tears of gratitude.
Well, gosh, thank you so much. That's so gratifying to hear. I know there was a lot of thirst out there for like, what the heck is going on? And extremely bizarrely, the former prosecutors became like what the journalists had been in Watergate, and it was strange. But if we were able, or I was able to, have that educational function, that's so lovely and gratifying of you to say. Thank you.
And psychologically too, don't forget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And today, fabulous, but I have to look at these notes. I hope to see you again.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Christina, followed by Kirk Gardner.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was very interesting and enlightening. My question was that you had mentioned that, good governance is very hard to turn into legislation. Do you think at all during the Biden administration we'll see some attempts to regulate government performance through legislation, or is that just off the table so long as the filibuster is still around and the
Yeah,
Senate.
so great question. So I think it's both hard in terms of unintended consequences. That's the point I was trying to make for the independent counsel statute, but very hard in terms of the political impasse. Every single skirmish has been so completely driven by the smallest, by smallest, I just mean meanest spirited partisan views. So on the Republican side, not, taxes or wariness of social policies or anything like that, but just how are we going to get these? We're a minority party. How are we going to get these votes in 2022? And there are now surfaced 2 or 3 things that are bona fide candidates for scrubbing the filibuster. The Voting Rights Act probably first among them. And so I think the Dems will be looking to, if they're of a mind to push back on the filibuster, it'll be in those 2 or 3 limited instances. So yeah, I don't see a big effort to try to rewrite things. And really, when you think about the main kind of offenses against the Constitution of the Trump years, they were done in a way that made your head do 360s because they were so obviously wrong and even contrary to law. I mean, he was able to escape any kind of legal oversight, and that kind of thing is it's not clear what writing it. The Hatch Act has been a joke for 4 years. It's a law though that says White House can't do certain political actions. They put it in a law a while ago, or in Hatch helped. Didn't mean anything these last few years. Anyway, so yeah, I don't see that the actual sort of legalization of the case against Trump being a big part of the Biden tenure.
Thank you.
Kirk Gardner, followed by Bernal.
Thank you for a great talk, Litman. I wondered if you were willing to comment on what you see as a possible implication or the implications from the decision in New York to criminally investigate the Trump Organization.
I mean, I've been doing it all morning, starting at 6 a.m., so I won't stop now. It's pretty big. What I mean, in brief, first, it's very unusual. The DA and the AG don't play together. So the fact that they did means basically both are bringing something to the table. It's pretty clear what the DA is. He's got the tax records, all this good stuff. What would the AG be? It'd be 2 things. I think she's probably developed some important evidence. And second, the Martin Act, this special law in New York, is very wide ranging. Third, she's come out of the blocks, maybe improperly, and publicized that it's a criminal investigation. His screed this morning had a kernel of validity when he invoked some of the statements she'd made in the campaign that certainly sounded like she had it out for him. But there's a flip side to that now, which is she doesn't have the goods. And if they together don't have the goods, it's sort of career ending. So I think in some psychological way, and not entirely salutary when you think about prosecutorial practice, she's committed herself to at least a few steps up the line, that is from Allen Weisselberg to the former president, in criminal charges. So I think it was a very important and for Trump and the Trump family foreboding decision.
Before I recognize Bernard, could you give us an idea of how long could this likely take?
That's often about the hardest things to do because certain internal steps that need be taken could be a day and it could be months. We saw this, think about Manafort and the work up to him, where if somebody says, no, I'm going to trial, I won't cooperate. They do that. And, but I'll say this, Cyrus Vance Jr. has said he's not returning he's not running for a new term. His term ends at the end of 2021. He has to want in the baddest way to make the charging decision, not to be there as it plays out, but to make the charging decision. And if he's contemplating the possibility of a charging decision against the former president, there are several steps, including through the Trump family. So I think all that suggests, the best laid plans could go awry, but I think that suggests they're going to be moving quickly. And in general, that suggests to me maximum pressure on 73-year-old, been there forever, not a Trump loyalist, but the loyalist of the old man, Alan Weisselberg, the CFO.
Thank you. Sorry for jumping ahead of you, Ben. I'll go ahead.
That's all right. Thank you very much for a very challenging presentation, especially the last part. So what would you say to the citizens who are concerned that William Barr is not being held accountable for his actions?
Well, first of all, I have to say, I'm probably the least credible person in the country on Barr, because when I had worked for him briefly, and when he was nominated, I came out with the opinion that gets thrown in my face every day about how he was an excellent choice. And then, so I was more and more disappointed and then horrified. But the answer is, I think that it's, the Nixon pardon. At the time, there couldn't have been greater outrage than against Nixon. And I think that history has said that was probably the right move for a lot of reasons. I'm not analogizing it strictly. I'm just saying there are counterpoints and things to counterbalance against, say, going after Barr, who, after all, was at worst, and I think it's probably accurate, was a political lackey, improperly put his hands on the scale, but nothing to the next to the criminal behavior of Flynn and Steele and Manafort, et cetera. So I think if we sat it through as like a jury of however many we are and really thought about the consequences on all sides, we could well end at the bottom line of the 68-year-old guy with the sterling reputation's been sullied forever. This will be the top of his obituary, and America has a lot of work to do. It's enough. You may not agree with that position, but I just want to, set it out there. In fact, I see the vigorous nods, but I want to set it out there as, Mitchell went to jail because he committed obstruction. And so that was important under Levy. But should we be reaching back? And I'll just say one more thing for Biden, that decision partakes, unlike for Garland, of more than just the mission of the DOJ. He's got a razor thin Senate and healthcare and COVID and HR1. And it's bizarre to me and disconcerting, but the majority of Republicans think the election was stolen. The base is still strong. So as a just sort of realpolitik matter, jamming it down the throat of Bill Barr, it's a complicated undertaking. One final point, it remains to be written, and maybe by me, and although, as I say, I have no credibility, Barr, I think, turns out to have been something other than the, Mephistopheles figure that he was painted at. There were things he did at the end, and not even at the end, and I'll just cite one. The whole impeachment in the first one was because Trump so dearly wanted the president of Ukraine just to announce that there was an investigation against Hunter Biden, just to use as a talking point on the campaign trail. Guess what? There was an investigation of Hunter Biden back in our very own Department of Justice, and Barr, as he's supposed to do, did not pass it along. That's a big kind of Boy Scout move. I think he's a more complicated figure, though. You can read my op-eds. The things he did, including this day with the mischaracterization of the Mueller report, were scurrilous.
I'm not seeing any other questions posted right now, so I'll go ahead and ask one of my own, if I may.
Yes, Susanna, I also have a question, but please go ahead.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Considering the new risks that are coming up regarding Roe versus Wade, can you comment about the potential expansion of the Supreme Court?
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going. Just first, let me say to the risks, they are, serious as a heart attack. I can't see why they take this case. If not, you cannot uphold the statute without, crippling at best and really putting a sword through the heart of abortion rights jurisprudence. Is that an argument for judicial expansion? So I think we are in the same kind of general territory that we've been traveling in all day, the sort of on the one hand, on the other hand, the long range versus the short range. And I'm here to say nobody, and I told you I worked with Merrick Garland, nobody is madder than I am about how they totally screwed them and everything. And I think this court is really a problem because it's so imbalanced. Even if you credit the honesty, et cetera, it's bad for the court to have this supermajority. But I'll just state a prediction, which is they won't do it because there is in the sort of DNA of the body politic a sense that that's just, too strong. They could come back and make it 17, whatever. So I think the commission will do a lot of talk, but no action on this. But I can't state a stronger case in the history of the court for doing it. It's really wrong and ugly what has happened to the court. I'll leave it there. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. It's a two-part question, but is there any chance, given McCarthy's and McConnell's refusal to entertain the notion of creating a January 6th commission, and the Republicans' steadfast intractability in this regard, is there any likelihood that it might happen? And if it did happen, is there any likelihood that it would have any teeth?
Right. So on the first, I think it's unlikely just because, going back to what I was saying, the Dems will not see it as a hill to die on. Even though it should, I think you'll see them caving, or there'll be so many this phony baloney. Well, let's also do Portland and this and that, et cetera. So my best guess is it won't happen. If it happened, I think it would have teeth because they'd have subpoena power, and the model would be the 9/11 commission. Don McGahn, come and talk to all these. Things wouldn't be about a pending criminal proceeding, but a duty to the nation to tell what happened. And I think it would be muscular and sort of, as I've said, a really important and to date unfully served function. But I think the Vegas odds are, it's close. It could take to the filibuster for this, and they really are clobbering McCarthy, who is, has no excuse, I think. But I think they'll cave. One man's opinion, but a man who's no longer in government, so can give all kinds of opinions.
Right, and we're no longer officially in front of the classroom, so we can give our opinions too.
Right.
Well, Harry, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great having you here. We are very grateful. Anytime you want to come back and schmooze with us, we'd be very appreciative. And so join me, everybody, in thanking Harry for his wonderful presentation today, and so appreciative. And for those of you who would like to stay on for a little wrap up, I promise to be brief. Please do so. Otherwise, I will see you all at some point down the line. But Harry, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Harry.
Suzanne, do you have anything before I make just a couple of very brief comments?
No, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, it's funny. I can see the number of participants just dropping like a rock. Then that's fine. I have to say, it is a real honor to take on the role of president of the Emeriti Association for the coming year. I hope I can discharge the responsibilities of the presidency with even a modicum of the wisdom and grace that Jake Jacoby and before him Bob Knox brought to the job. And actually, to be honest, if I'm going to emulate anybody, it would be Jed Bartlett, because I've been binge watching West Wing reruns at night. So if you're gonna shoot for the stars, go for it. Jake, by the way, please put the keys to the presidential dacha in the mail and make sure the fridge is well stocked. But with all sincerity, I am, as they say in the United Kingdom, well pleased and chuffed at this honor. I look forward to working with the rest of the EA leadership and with Suzanne and Vanya to continue trying to make the significant impact that Emeriti do make as mentors, as scholars, as teachers, and as leaders, and to try to identify how we can grow and flourish in the brave new world that we're about to enter. Today, I think, has been a wonderful day. We've had awards, we've had our scholars present, we had Harry Litman, we had Jake's wonderful remarks, but we have a challenging and strange and difficult year ahead, what a long, strange trip it's been, but it's going to continue to be so, I think, for the next year. Mark Applebaum's death has left an enormous hole in the Emeriti Association and in the Scholars Mentors Program. And I know that Anne, Craig, and Gabriella Wienhausen have stepped up to the plate and will take on that responsibility with passion and vigor. But Mark's loss as a colleague and friend and leader, is certainly felt. And the challenges ahead are going to be palpable, and they will evolve. How do we, when do we, it's an if, when, and how as to whether we can resume some semblance of normality on campus. And also the question of what this past year plus has wrought on the nature of the university and life in education is going to be something we're going to have to contend with. I will say that I am very comforted by the sober voices and the considerable wisdom in our membership. And I'm grateful that so many of our members come from both the medical community and senior campus administration and are able to help us understand how to move through these very uncertain times. I would like to do all I can to help grow the ranks of the mentors. This was my first year as a mentor in this Emeriti mentorship program, and I really have been just dazzled by the intelligence, the enthusiasm, and the vitality of the students. It's been very rewarding, and I will admit, I had to be dragged kicking and screaming by Mark and Suzanne to join the ranks of mentors. I kept begging off, claiming that I didn't think that a theater professor would be of any use as a mentor to a computer science major. And my mantra was, let me know when you have an art student, figuring that the odds were against it. And well, they found an art student this year. And the truth is, I discovered, and I think I knew this in my heart, that the disciplinary match has much less significance than I thought or claimed. It's our passion, our experience in life and on campus that really make the relationship flourish. And I hope that we can continue to entice Emeriti to join the ranks of the mentors. And I also hope to grow the membership of the EA itself. As Harry Pohl has reminded us, the more of us, the louder our voice, and the louder our voice, the more impact we will have in CUSIA and in RASC and in the UC system. Jake eloquently paraphrased Charles Dickens in his opening remarks. In my closing, I will not so eloquently paraphrase the MC in the musical Cabaret. I am here to serve you. So please, thank you, everybody. Thanks to Jake and Suzanne and all the other leaders. Keep in touch, be well and safe, and have a good summer. And thanks to everybody in the leadership and in the membership. We look forward to the speaker series that Alan McCutcheon is going to be putting together for next year. So thank you. Suzanne?
That's it. That's a wrap. Thank you, Stephen. Very eloquent. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Great job, everybody.
Wonderful job. Yeah. Okay.